It looks like Dodge may be making a return to the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series in 2026, and Aric Almirola is still at Joe Gibbs Racing and could make some starts potentially this year. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got some NASCAR and other motorsports story discussed today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just show them straight really quickly. We're going to start by talking about Buc-ee's. As there was reported by Adam Stern last night, the Buc-ee's was spotted at Daytona International Speedway, the president of the company. And it sounds like there will be more involvement from Buc-ee's in 2025. Buc-ee's has had some association with NASCAR in the past. I believe in 2024. They have never sponsored an event at this point, but I wouldn't be surprised or shocked if you see a race sponsored by Buc-ee's at some point in 2025, considering Buc-ee's is one of the fastest growing gas station brands in the United States currently at the moment. They're opening up locations across the country right now, and it's a very, very popular brand, as it kind of looks like a Walmart in a sense when you go inside that gas station. Overall, this is really awesome to see the Buc-ee's is updating their partnership with the sport, and I think it's good to see they're continuing to work with the sport in some way, shape, or form, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about NASCAR. As it was reported by Adam Stern earlier today, the NASCAR has added a bunch of features to its website: TV listing bar, social media, enhanced leaderboards, AI-powered timeline, crew chief stats, among other things as well. And they've also updated the NASCAR Classics page as well in a pretty massive way, adding the NASCAR Xfinity Series side. I've looked at the website, and I think there's a lot of positives with the new website as well. I have seen some issues with the website in the timeline during some of the races crashing and not being able to show up. There's also been some glitches with the website from time to time, but those are some of the kinks and bugs that they'll probably fix throughout time as they do try to continue working with the app to make it a lot better. I think they did a solid job updating it. I think having stories like you do on Instagram, on Facebook, or Meta at this point, on Twitter, they've got them as well, and other platforms like Snapchat. I think NASCAR wants to kind of go toward that direction, which I think that's a positive to kind of get updated with the times. And I think Digital Group over there, run by Tim Clark and everyone over there, is generally doing a really solid and a really good job, all things considered. So I think it's pretty good to see this, and glad to see that they're going to update the website in a pretty big way. I love some of the updates they've put to the website, to be honest with you. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Joey Logano and Brad Keselowski. As it was put out there by Christopher Hansen and reported on the Fox broadcast during the Daytona 500 rain delay, that Joey Logano and Brad Keselowski will be calling the Truck Series race at Atlanta Motor Speedway on Saturday afternoon. Joey Logano and Brad Keselowski both have commentated NASCAR Xfinity Series races before, but I don't believe that Brad Keselowski has ever called a NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series event. What this tells me is what Fox is doing is probably what they're doing, something very similar to what they did with their NASCAR Xfinity broadcast, where they would have driver analysts from the Cup Series come down and broadcast there. They did that, of course, for Daytona, where they had Joey Logano and Kevin Harvick do the truck broadcast along with Jamie Little. Now it sounds like Logano's going to do a lot of truck races going forward. I think having a modern touch like this is really huge. Brad Keselowski is honestly really, really good in a booth, and I think he should be doing coverage for some of these series going forward. Once he retires from racing, he should go up in a booth, because Brad Keselowski provides a lot of analysis, and he does overall a very, very solid job. I think it's great to see that they've got that booth going at the moment, and overall, I really love that they're going to be doing that, and they're going to have Joey Logano and Brad in the booth. Pretty excited they're both going to get the chance and opportunity to work in the booth together, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Craig Bracken. As it was confirmed early this morning that Craig Bracken has been officially released from the hospital last night after basically going to the hospital. Now, for those who do not know, if you watched the ARCA race, we talked about the wreck fest on the channel. Craig Bracken was caught up in one of the big wrecks that took place on the backstretch, and Amber Ballkin ran into Cletus McFarland going down the back straightaway, and Craig got hit multiple times, hit the inside wall really hard. Then I believe he got hit by Takuma Koga going down the back straightaway, and he was transported to a local hospital. It's really good to see he has been released from the hospital. It's unknown what the future of his racing plans are for this year with the Young's Motorsports team and organization, but I really hope he does get the opportunity to make some more starts once again. But I think the big positive here of all the news coming out is the fact he has been officially released from the hospital. It's good to see that has happened, and glad to see that Craig is okay after a very scary situation and very scary wreck. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Matt Tifft. Now, Matt Tifft, a couple days ago on social media, basically posted an update on his future in NASCAR. He did talk about the fact that he had some opportunities to maybe come back and do some NASCAR starts in 2024 last year and over the course of the last couple years. However, he is not approved currently at the moment to make any NASCAR starts at this particular moment in time. And according to Matt Weaver from Sportsnot and Athlon Sports, Matt Tifft will likely not be eligible to return to NASCAR until 2031. Now, for those who do not know about Matt Tifft, unfortunately, Matt Tifft suffers from epilepsy, a condition he developed in 2019, where he had to sit out of the race at Martinsville, unfortunately, due to a seizure, sadly. So for Matt Tifft, it's been good to see he has been doing a lot better. It's a shame to hear this news, though. He won't be able to return until 2031 at the minimum. That is a long time. And Matt Tifft, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, will be around 40 years old at that point. I believe Matt Tift's around the age of 30. So he's going to be getting a little bit up there in age for him to even get the chance and opportunity to come back. And he's still going to have to get medically approved to come back to the sport in any way, shape, or form. So I really hope for Matt Tifft they can figure this out and they can get back into sports sooner than 2031, because that's a long time away for that to happen. I hope they can definitely get it figured out, because I do truly believe that Matt Tifft should get an earlier opportunity. I get why, for medical reasons, why they don't want to put him out on the track for reasons, but at the same token, same time, I really hope Matt in the future gets the eligibility to go ahead and run some NASCAR races in the next couple of years before 2031. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Richard Childress Racing. As there was a report by Racing America and TobyChristie.com that Richard Childress Racing has officially sold out on sponsorship for 2025. They have confirmed that Zone will be the majority sponsor of the number 8 car for this year. Bass Pro Shop / Winchester will be the majority sponsor for Austin Dillon. Jess Love, of course, will have Wheeling this year. And Bennett Family Transportation will be the majority sponsor for Austin Hill in 2025. They also did confirm, as expected, that they are going to have a third part-time NASCAR Cup Series entry this year as well. This is really huge for Rich Childress Racing. They've obviously lost some big sponsors throughout the year. Zone, of course, is upping their sponsorship. We talked about it in the video previously. Many of you probably seen. But we, of course, have seen Zone up their partnership, taking over the position of 3Chi. We also expect Rebel Bourbon to sponsor for some other races throughout this year. It's unknown if some. We are expecting Morgan to be there with Kyle Busch this year, but it's unknown when other sponsors are back with the team or what new sponsors are coming into play for the remainder of the year. As for the number 33 car, we still have not had any confirmation on the drivers that are going to run in that car. There's been some speculation that Will Brown is going to make 2 starts in that car in the NASCAR Cup Series. We're hearing maybe Chicago's one of those races, and maybe Sonoma as well. Mexico is being indicated as a possibility. We are hearing that Austin Hill and Jesse Love may make some NASCAR Cup starts in that number 33 as well, but it's unknown how many races exactly they're going to run in 2025. Nonetheless, it's really good to see that they're sold out on sponsorship for 2025, and I do think it's pretty huge that ARCA now officially knows that they're going to be good to go for the remainder of the year and the remainder of the season on sponsorship side of things for 2025. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about ThorSport Racing. Now, right before the Daytona 500 happened, ThorSport Racing put out a teaser video indicating they've got a pretty big announcement that is going to be coming by the time many of you watched this yesterday. They were teasing a potential driver who could be getting behind the wheel of that truck in 2025. Now, we don't know exactly which driver they have decided to put behind that car. Some have said maybe Connor Jones, but from what I understand, Connor Jones is not planning at this time to make any starts with the ThorSport Racing organization in 2025 after what happened last year with the teammates at Phoenix. Some of the temper tantrums that he has had and what happened at Homestead really was a big reason why he won't get the chance and opportunity to drive for ThorSport Racing this year. Could it be Johnny Sauter? We know Johnny Sauter ran the truck race at Daytona, so that could certainly be a possibility, but I don't think it's going to be Johnny Sauter. My best guess is Luke Fenhaus. Luke Fenhaus did test for the team at Rockingham about a month or so ago, and Luke Fenhaus did make a couple starts for ThorSport Racing in 2024. And honestly, in the few races that I saw him run, he was extremely impressive out on the racetrack. So I'm really hoping that Luke Fenhaus is him, because I think he deserves to be full-time in NASCAR. He's a super young but a super talented driver, and he keeps his nose clean 9 times out of 10 on the racetrack. So I really hope it's Luke Fenhaus. He's a really good driver. He's got a lot of potential to be really successful in the sport long term if given the right opportunities and right chances. I hope it's him, because again, I think he deserves to be full-time in the sport. If not, I think it'll be Johnny Sauter or Jake Drew or someone else who's been part of the ThorSport organization. We'll just have to wait and see who it truly is, because I hope it's someone good. We'll just have to wait and see which driver it exactly is going into the remainder of the year. And now we're going to ahead jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about IndyCar. As it was reported by Adam Stern yesterday evening that Steve Phelps spoke on Fox and IndyCar's partnership going into this year. Steve Phelps actually praised Fox for promoting the IndyCar series, as they feel like with NASCAR still being the king of the hill going into this year, they feel like that a ship rides all tides, where everyone's working together in the motorsports lane. We obviously know that NASCAR on Fox, in comparison to IndyCar's coverage, especially with the trailers, have been very lackadaisical compared to the IndyCar side. We've seen some world-class and incredible trailers. When you look at the trailer for the Daytona 500, it absolutely looked very, very boring and just was very mundane compared to the IndyCar trailers. It looked incredible and a great promotion for 3 of the most popular drivers in the sport: Pat O'Ward, Joseph Newgarden, and Alex Palou. I think you got to think about this still. You can't put all blame on Fox. Blame NASCAR. They took the deal. They took the deal with more money, which unfortunately meant less exposure. And I think that's one of the reasons why Fox has not put as much effort as they have done. That being said, Fox should definitely 100% be doing a lot more promotion than what they've been doing currently at the moment to help the sport grow. But at the same token, at the same time, from what it sounds like, NASCAR is not always willing to give them creative control and creative rights, which I find that to be also really irritating in a sense, because I do think that they should be getting at least some creative control on what they want to do. And instead, it sounds like they're not getting that creative control they're really, really looking for currently at the moment. I really hope we do see things improve on the Fox side with NASCAR, but I'm not sure if that's going to happen. I just don't know if it will get fixed, and I don't know if it will get resolved. I wish it could, but to be honest with you, I don't trust it. I don't know if it will get resolved in the not-so-distant future, to be honest with you. I hope it does get resolved, but I'm not sure if Fox will care about NASCAR as much anymore. And now we're going ahead jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Kris Wright. Now, if you watched the NASCAR Xfinity Series race that took place at Daytona on the CW, you saw the wild crash that took place coming down the front straightaway during green flag pit stops. I believe coming around 35 to 36 laps ago in the event, there was contact, and we'll talk about the Anthony Alfredo side of this in just a second, but Kris Wright just comes barreling down pit road, nearly misses the pit stall, and runs into the back of Josh Buc-ee, destroying the back of his car. Originally, it was reported that Kris Wright may have had no brakes, but it turns out he didn't really not have no brakes. He had at least some brakes, because the lights were going a little bit on the brake pedals of the car, and basically he just straight up runs in the back of Josh Buc-ee at incredible speeds. Now then he basically said there was a miscommunication on my part and on the spotter's part. I want to say something really quick about Kris Wright. I really don't fully understand why this guy is in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Now, let's get to the Anthony Alfredo side of things, because this is something I believe someone discovered on Twitter. Apparently, there might have been some contact from Anthony Alfredo and Kris Wright. We're not even sure if Kris Wright at the time had been planning to come down pit road. Even if he wasn't planning to come down pit road, why are you going that fast on the apron when people are trying to merge down pit road? Kris Wright should have known better. And I'm sorry to say this about Kris Wright, but that was one of the dumbest things I have seen on a track in a very, very long time. And that was completely avoidable. You've got a brake pedal. Use it. That's not on the spotter. You can still use the brake pedal. Even if you're not planning to go on pit road, you can still use the goddamn brake pedal. It's on the right for a reason. They tell drivers, if you're planning to come down pit road, basically use your brake pedal. And I don't even know, like I said, if he was planning to come down pit road, but that was just one of the dumbest things I have ever seen. Anthony Alfredo got a place for this? Really? I don't get it. It just doesn't make sense to me why Anthony Alfredo got a place for this guy. Again, I understand that Kris Wright brings a lot of money, but people have been saying that you're going to need to have a lot of money if you're going to have him behind the wheel, because there's a very likely chance and possibility that your equipment and your cars are going to get destroyed. I mean, he's one of the reasons why Brandon built Motorsports no longer existed, because he destroyed a ton of cars near the end of the year. That's one of the reasons why he didn't get this opportunity with a good team, because if he had a good team like Nice Motorsports, he really struggled. I think got replaced at the end of the season because he just was so bad with the team in 2021. So overall, when I look at this situation as a whole, it was completely avoidable. It was unnecessary. And to me, like I've already mentioned and said before, it is one of the stupidest and dumbest things that I've probably seen as a fan in the sport. And I've seen a lot of dumb stuff as a fan in the sport, but that's one of the dumbest things I've seen in nearly 20 years of being a fan. And it's frustrating because there's drivers in the sport that aren't in the NASCAR Xfinity Series full-time, like Brett Moffitt, who probably should be in that car, but instead you've got Kris Wright in that car destroying and wrecking equipment. Good job, Kris. You put yourself in the limelight for one of the dumbest things we've seen. Just pretty stupid and bad move on his part, in my opinion. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Doug Collins. Now, right before the Daytona 500 began earlier today, Doug Collins put out a tweet thanking President Trump for being down there and basically saving the country. But he basically talked about regulations and other things. And Doug Collins, who I believe is a representative, I think he's the Veteran Affairs guy, I'm pretty sure from what I was told, basically he's calling for restrictor plates to be removed on the NASCAR Cup Series cars because he feel like the racing has not been good with the restrictor plates on the cars. Now look, when I hear something like this from a representative, I kind of get where he's coming from in some areas. However, if you take restrictor plates off these cars completely, these cars are going to be going 220 to 230 miles an hour because that's how fast they would end up going. And I think that there has to be at least some sort of restrictions when it comes to running on her. It wouldn't be safe for the teams, and I think it would overall be a very bad move because I think while, yes, it might create some interesting racing itself, when the laps would be insane, they'd probably be getting around Daytona in probably less than 40 seconds of how fast they can be. The problem I have with this is the safety reason. One of the reasons why they put plates on these cars and taper spaces on the cars in the first place is because of a crash that happened where Bobby Allison flew into the catch fence and NASCAR had to put it on there as they're going 210 to 215 miles an hour. Now, I do have one area where I would love to see restrictor plates go, and that's for Daytona 500 qualifying. I would like to see them try to break that record. Breakar brought this up on his channel, so I'll credit him for this, where he basically said, we take the restrictor plates or the tapered spacers off these cars during Daytona 500 qualifying to see if they could break the all-time record from Bill Elliott, which I believe he has a 210-mile-an-hour lap at Daytona, and I believe at Talladega, I think he's got a 220-mile-an-hour lap back in 1987 before they brought the plates on. I think we should be going for the record there. I think it makes Daytona 500 qualifying very interesting. I feel like Daytona 500 qualifying, the cars are way too slow. They're going 182 and 183 miles an hour. The cars need to be updated, and there needs to be more speed coming out of them. So that's the one area I will agree with Doug Collins on. But I won't agree with removing restrictor plates on the super speedway tracks. I think there's a potential of a dangerous and disastrous situation coming if you go ahead and just remove them overall for all the other stuff. But again, I do agree entirely with the fact of getting rid of them for qualifying. I think it make qualifying more interesting and really fun. We'll see if they do that, but I don't trust NASCAR. They're probably not going to do what the fans want, which is really unfortunate. But I think there's some things I agree with Doug Collins on, but I don't agree with everything that he wants to do, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Fox versus the CW. Now, over the course of the last couple of days, we've had racing at Daytona. The Xfinity Series had their first race officially with the CW in 2025, and Fox, of course, had the truck and ARCA broadcast this year. And there's starting to be a lot of comparisons between Fox and the CW. Now, I want to first begin by talking about the Fox coverage, because let me be real and honest with y'all. The Fox coverage, the truck race and the ARCA race, the coverage for those races was just absolutely awful. The racing coverage was terrible. A full-screen commercial during the ARCA race with 8 laps to go in the event is just completely outrageous. Multiple bad camera shots throughout the events. They're missing certain wrecks. They missed multiple wrecks during the duels. They also, of course, like I said, had terrible lackadaisical coverage from the booth as well. I think Joey Logano and Kevin Harvick did okay, but Jamie Little as a lead broadcaster, yes, she really don't have it. And during the ARCA race, it just was worse. It was very, very lackadaisical, and the coverage just was bad on a lot of different parts. You compare that to the CW. The CW, I want to make this clear, they were not perfect. They had some mistakes. They had audio issues from what I understand, and they also had issues with the app. But there was better presentation. There wasn't even a single full screen ad the whole entire time. I will say that there was a lot of split screen. I'd like to see that change going forward, but there was a lot less full screen ads than Fox. In fact, no single full screen ads during the racing action. That's a big step up right there. Also, more chemistry in the booth for the CW for Adam Alexander, Jamie McMurray, and Parker Kligerman. Carly Gabehart, she did an exceptional job. And of course, I think that the other people there, Kim Kuhn and Dylan Walsh, did a really good job on pit road. The CW just feels a lot more collected, and they seem like they actually care about the sport. They also talked about the Xfinity fastest lap. They talked about on the broadcast. Fox never mentioned that on the broadcast, and that could have a major impact on who wins the championship at the end of the day. I feel like for Fox, and I've said this for a long time, they used to be so good. I wish Fox was on the same level as the CW, because I think the CW's first coverage, they knocked it out of the park. Yes, there's things they can work on, but for a first coverage team, best you can do to open up. They did a solid job, and there'll be things they can definitely fix and work on for sure. Fox has been bad for the last few years, and they really, really need to get it together. I like Jamie Little as a pit reporter, and she's one of the best people in this industry. Stop putting her in the booth. Get Eric Brennan in the booth, please. Eric Brennan is so much better. He did those few ARCA races last year. Both of them were two of the best ARCA coverages we have seen all year. He cares about motorsports. Where's Rick Allen? Why is Rick Allen not in the booth for the truck races? Rick Allen is so good in the booth. He's doing PA work at this point. Why is he not in the booth? Why can we not have good people in the right positions? And for people saying it's a certain reason why you don't want Jamie Little, Vince Walsh, by the way, was not good in the booth either. Vince Walsh, a great pit reporter, not a good lead commentator. I don't want to see him back in the booth either anymore. So I think there's got to be a lot of things changed with the Fox coverage. CW knocked out of the park for their first coverage. I think Fox has got a lot of work to do. Are they going to fix it? I don't know at this particular point, but there's a lot of things Fox needs to do because their coverage was just absolutely atrocious and so bad. I wouldn't rule out possibly down the road of the brand breaking their contracts. They're just so bad right now. A lot of people are already calling them for breaking their contract. And they did that thing with Dale Earnhardt too during the pre-race, which I just thought was disgusting on their part. So I think personally they need to get out of the sport as a whole, Fox at this point. And CW should probably take all the coverage overall outside of the NBC and Amazon stuff, in my opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Cletus McFarland. Now, Cletus McFarland competed in the ARCA race at Daytona International Speedway, actually qualified pretty decently and was running up front in the early portion of the race. And he actually survived the first big wreck and big crash on lap number 4. However, Cletus McFarland, a few laps later on the second restart, Amber Balkan loses off the corner and right rear clips Cletus McFarland and spins him, and Kyle Steckley, his teammate, ends up getting collected and runs into the inside wall. Now, Cletus McFarland would continue on. The engine shut off there for a second. He got it back going, though, and came to pit road and was still in it. Then Amber Balkan had another problem going down the back straightaway. Sounded like she might have had a flat tire going down the back straightaway. Cletus ends up getting collected in the wreck with nothing he could do, just nowhere he could go, unfortunately, and runs into Amber Balkan, and his car is completely destroyed, ending his day. Then he delivers one of the most all-time great interviews we have probably seen in racing history, talking about bald eagles, zigging and zagging about other things. And then he went up in the booth for a little bit, and honestly, for the Fox coverage, he was the best part of that booth. And he also confirmed, it sounds like, according to reports, that he will be running the ARCA race at Talladega Superspeedway. And his long-term goal is to eventually run the Daytona 500. Cletus McFarland they were streaming his onboard camera during the ARCA race on the NASCAR channel, and Cletus's people, the amount of people watching, was around 49 to 52,000 people. That is huge for ARCA. Having Cletus McFarland run the race brought a lot of eyes on the event, especially with the race being on Fox. I think Cletus McFarland being part of the sport is absolutely really important for ARCA to grow. And ARCA is a series that, while I do think it's gotten better in some areas, the racing product definitely needs to improve, at least on the super speedways for sure. But I think Cletus McFarland running Talladega would definitely be really, really huge. especially Rhett Jones Racing when they just hired Greg Zipadelli recently, which I think Greg is going to be a massive asset to that program going forward. But I really think Cletus McFarland should run the full season next year. That would be really fun. And Cletus McFarland is still relatively young. I'm pretty sure he's only 29 years old currently at the moment and turns 30 this year. So he could still have a pretty solid racing career. As like I've already mentioned, he wants to eventually get to the Daytona 500. And back in the day too, a lot of drivers would start racing in their late 20s and their early 30s and have pretty successful careers. So I really would love to see Cletus McFarland come back and make some more starts in 2025 outside of Talladega. But he brought a lot of people and a lot of eyeballs on and was doing overall a pretty dang good job out on the racetrack. And I think it'd be pretty fun to see him make some more starts in the 2025 ARCA season. Not just the Super Speedways, but I'd like to see him maybe do Bristol later this year. Maybe go out and do, I think, the Lime Rock's on the schedule for them, I'm pretty sure. Why not go do Lime Rock? Why not do a road course at this point like Watkins Glen? I think that'd be really, really cool. And I think overall, when you look at it, I think he brought a lot of stuff to the ARCA series, and he brought a lot of fans too. And I think that having that fan base that can really grow ARCA, that's really, really huge. I think a lot of drivers know how big of an impact he really could bring to the table. And overall, I think it's good to see that Cletus McFarland got the chance and opportunity to be in ARCA this year. I think it's huge. And again, I really hope he does get the chance and opportunity to make more starts in the 2025 season in ARCA. And maybe down the road he gets a truck series star. I think that'd be really cool that he can move up the trucks down the road and maybe do a short track. I know Rayum has a couple trucks races still available on their schedule. They don't really have everything set. Cody Dennison's going to run a lot of races in that truck. And Tyler Tomasi's got 2 races, but there's still some races that are available. And maybe you never know, he can go up to Xfinity with Rhett Jones, who I think could have an Xfinity program at some point this year. But he brought a lot to the table, and overall, I think it's really cool to see that Cletus McFarland got the chance and opportunity to work with the Rhett Jones Racing Group, and good to see him make some more starts in 2025. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next major story in today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Busch. Now, Bob Pockrass a couple days ago on Friday put out a really interesting article in regards to this year at Richard Childress Racing, where Bob Pockrass noted that this is a pivotal year for Kyle Busch at Richard Childress Racing. Now, why is it a pivotal year? Well, 2025 is the last year on Kyle Busch's 3-year contract. Originally, Kyle Busch had signed a 3-year deal, with that 3rd year being an option year at Richard Childress Racing. He exercised that option going into 2025, but Kyle Busch is in a contract year this year. And Kyle Busch is still, at this moment, at this time, not signed a contract extension for 2026. And I think this year is very pivotal for RCR to get off on a really, really good foot. We thought the Clash would go a lot better for Kyle Busch. I thought he'd be a major factor and serious contender to go out there and win the race there, and he never really was a factor at the Clash. But granted, Bowman Gray is definitely a different track than Los Angeles Coliseum, even though they're the same length. Some tracks have different characteristics compared to other tracks. They have done some hirings over the offseason. Richard Boswell's a crew chief this year for Austin Dillon. And then, of course, they added Johnny Klossmeyer to the competition side of the team for this year. And they've got sponsorship set for Kyle Busch throughout the year. Here's the one thing I do worry about in regards to Kyle Busch, though, in 2025. If RCR, through the first couple months of the year, if they cannot perform, let's say by the 5th or 6th race of the year, when we get to April and May, I think Kyle Busch is going to start having a lot of questions asked to him about, are you going to stay with the RCR? Are you going to keep driving for this team? Or are you going to go to another team? Because I think there's going to be some opportunities knocking. I look at that Trackhouse team with rumors of Suarez maybe leaving at the end of the year. I could see Kyle Busch going over to a team like that. There are rumors out there at one point about him going to 23-11 and maybe working with his brother Kurt. I could see that down the road if things don't get better. I've heard rumors of Spire being a potential possibility. So I think when it comes to the Kyle Busch sweepstakes, among other things, I think he's definitely going to have a good year this year. I'm not saying he needs to return to that level he was in like 2015 and 2016. But I want to see that level he was at the beginning of 2023. Because I think Kyle Busch right now, unfortunately, is wasting his talent at RCR. And it's a shame, too, because I think RCR not long ago, when Tyler Reddick was driving for the team and the program, this team was actually performing very, very strongly and really, really well. And it's a shame to see a team that not that long ago was super, super fast and very, very competitive. It's a shame to see them having issues and problems, and they can't really run consistently up front like they have in the past when Dale Earnhardt was driving for the team many, many years ago. And I would like to see Kyle Busch bring this team back up, but I think there's some things that need to be done. Number one, I think Austin Dillon probably should retire in the near future so that he could focus on the upper management side of things and get Jesse Love in that car, so I think Jesse Love would be great. But I think if this team really does not step up to the plate and run a lot better this year, I think it's very likely that Kyle Busch will not have a ride going into 2026 with RCR, because I think Kyle Busch is going to walk. He's not in the hot seat in any way, shape, or form like Daniel Suarez is this year or other drivers like Austin Cindric, but he is going to have to run better if he wants to stick around, because I then do believe that he'll be shopping around looking for a new ride. I think he wants to stay at RCR. There's no question on that. I think he wants to see this team really get a lot better in 2025. But right now, I'm just not seeing it from the Richard Childress Racing team and group. I want to see him do good, like I said. I want to see him run really well with this program and get this team up and running. But I think we're in a very similar situation, except the sponsorship side of things. We're in a very similar situation with things that happened to Joe Gibbs Racing. I'm getting those same flashbacks and those same feelings of what happened in 2022. So hopefully things can turn around for the team to get multiple wins, because I think one win will not be enough for this team. I think multi-wins is going to be what is needed for Kyle Busch to stick around with RCR going into 2026. So we'll see what happens with the whole Kyle Busch contract situation over there at this point. But I'm not sure if Kyle Busch will stick around with RCR at the end of the year. If things get better, he might stick around. But like I said, I think there's an outside chance and possibility that Kyle Busch will actually leave the RCR team and organization at the end of 2025. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode, as we're talking about Aric Almirola. Now, last night during the NASCAR Xfinity Series race, Matt Weaver from Sportsline Athlon Sports published a photo on Twitter indicating that Aric Almirola is still spotted over at Joe Gibbs Racing. And many of you also probably saw at the Daytona 5 in a pre-race as well, that Aric Almirola is still wearing the Joe Gibbs Racing shirt, indicating he is still at Joe Gibbs Racing in 2025. There was chatter, of course, at the end of 2024 about Aric Almirola potentially retiring at the end of last year. But the fact that he's wearing a Joe Gibbs Racing shirt and is still with the team in 2025 tells me that Aric Almirola potentially more than likely will be making some NASCAR Xfinity Series starts in 2025. Now, Aric Almirola's schedule for this year, if he does make some starts this year, has still not been officially confirmed and announced at this point. But we do know there's still a lot of races that are available with the Joe Gibbs Racing team this year. Justin Bonzano, I believe, has 8 or 9 races scheduled in the number 19 car for this year, and Chase Briscoe is going to drive the number 19 at Charlotte. But there's a lot of races still that could be available for Aric Almirola to run in 2025. Aric Almirola last year in 2024 had a fantastic season, at least on the racetrack. Aric Almirola picked up 3 wins, including sweeping at Martinsville in the number 20 car, and he also picked up a win at Kansas at the end of last year. And then I think he almost had a chance to win the Owners' Championship, and I believe finished inside the top 10 at Phoenix in the final race as well. Now, off the track, things were not so pretty. In the middle of the season, while he was planning to run the Charlotte race, there was unfortunately a skirmish that took place between Aric Almirola and Bubba Wallace during a Joe Gibbs Racing and Toyota competition meeting. From what is said, maybe punches had been thrown and shoves were thrown and things got broken up. Joe Gibbs Racing would suspend Aric Almirola internally because of this. There was talk about this happening. No one really knew what was going on, but it was confirmed, I believe, in late July going to early August that this was going to happen. There was a lot of talk that Aric wasn't going to be back with the program at all. But then it was confirmed that Aric Almirola will be back at Watkins Glen. Bubba Wallace would not speak on the situation, just talk about the character and all that stuff. And Aric Almirola, out of respect, did not talk about the situation either as well. But going back to Aric Almirola being back at Joe Gibbs Racing in some sort of capacity, I want to see Aric Almirola make some starts this year with this team. I really think he deserves another chance and opportunity, and it would have been really cool for him to be full-time with this program this year, as I think Aric Almirola still has it. I know that he didn't run absolutely great with Stewart-Haas Racing, but last year, he was so good. 3 wins, one of the winningest drivers of 2023, had the same amount of wins as Shane Van Gisbergen and Sam Mayer last year, and almost same amount of wins. One more race than the guy actually won the championship, Justin Allgaier. Sammy won more races than Cole Custer, and he also won more races than Riley Herbst and majority of the field in 2024. I think Aric Almirola, if he got the opportunity to be full-time in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, I think he generally would have been a major championship threat and serious contender. Now, I do think he'll run less races. If he does run this year, it will probably be less races because there's less races on the schedule. My best guess, it'll probably be near the end of the year is when he most likely will get a majority of those starts in that car if he does, in fact, make some starts with the team this year. But I think Aric Almirola is still a very, very good driver. Even with someone who's not been full-time the last 2 years at this point, I think he should get the chance and opportunity to be there racing this year. Now, not just Aric Almirola, we're also heard some stuff about Martin Truex Jr. We have heard that MTJ could potentially make some starts with the 19 team this year in the Xfinity Series. There was talk about him doing Rockingham. That is not on the schedule for Martin Truex Jr. at this point. So we could see him, though, make some starts with another team this year. We are hearing he may make some truck starts, too. But I would also not rule out the possibility of Almirola making starts in the Truck Series and even the Cup Series at this point. We do know that 2411 is expected, it sounds like, to run a fourth car at some point this year, most likely for Corey Heim and Carlos Kerbush if they ever come back. But I think Aric Almirola should be in consideration for that ride as well, at least on a part-time basis. I think that him being in a Cup car at least a little bit would be really, really cool, and I think that'd be fun for that to happen at some point this year. But I do think it's good that Almirola is still working with them and giving advice to the young drivers, because you look at the team going into this year, and yeah, you've got Brandon Jones, who's around the age of 30 years old, but you've got two really young drivers who are over at that program this year. You've got William Sawalch, who just turned 18 last October, who's full-time this year. And you've got Taylor Gray, who will turn 20 in a couple weeks from now. You've got two really young drivers who still need a lot of work and refining to do in order to be very, very successful. Because I think both have a lot of potential, and I think that Taylor Gray will be more successful than William Sawalch is this year. But I think bringing someone in that could be coaching them and really help the young drivers, also same thing helping Chase Briscoe this year, I think that's huge. I did see him hanging around with Chase Briscoe and Christopher Bell. I think helping those younger drivers of the team, and some of them are getting a little older too, I think that's going to be really huge to helping the Joe Gibbs Racing team getting a lot better this year. Again, we'll have to wait and see exactly what race that Aric Almirola does end up running, if he does run with the team this year, because he never fished to confirm he was retiring. He still indicated he would like to come back in some way, shape, or form throughout 2025. We're just going to have to wait and see exactly how many starts he does make this year, if he does in fact make some starts. But I think it sounds like there's a very good likely chance and possibility that we could see Aric Almirola make some starts with the Joe Gibbs Racing team in 2025. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the final major story of today's episode, as we're talking about Dodge. As it was shockingly reported earlier today, a couple hours before the Daytona 500, that it sounds like that there's a new manufacturer that could be coming at least to the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series in 2026. And according to reports, the leading report is Dodge. According to Kris Wright from CatchFence.net, they have obtained reports that there is a new expansion coming in 2026 in the Craftsman Truck Series, and Dodge and Ram are the leading candidates. They say that Dodge is the leading candidate to return to NASCAR in 2026, at least in the Craftsman Truck Series. According to the report as well from Kris Wright from CashFence.com and also Adam Stern as well, it has been reported that there's going to be some new cost-cutting measures that are going to be coming to the Truck Series next year to get into this series, with the new body being submitted, which if they were going to come in 2026, it would have had to been submitted on September 20th of last year. Talking about Dodge, this is absolutely huge. We've been hearing rumors and speculation from people like Steve Phelps, people in the industry like Marshall Pruitt over the years about a new manufacturer coming in. Dodge has had some association with the Truck Series. They actually were in the Truck Series up until 2013 when they left around that time, and they had some association with some of the lower funded teams up until 2016 when you had the Zombie Dodges racing in the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series as well. But they have not been fully funded since the end of 2012. You had big teams like Bracken Racing that were successful with those programs, and you had other teams like Bill Davis Racing early in the days having opportunities, even though they eventually end up working with Toyota in the future. But I think this is absolutely huge. And I think having a new manufacturer coming in sport is huge, because Dodge, there were rumors a couple years ago about them coming back to NASCAR. Steve Phelps mentioned it when Kyle Larson, around the time Larson won the championship at the end of 2021, and we covered it on the channel. He mentioned Dodge by name as one of the leading candidates to potentially come back and work in the sport. And there was talk of them being in Cup. There was talks early in 2022 as well about it, and those talks kind of quieted down in the middle of 2022 because Brad Keselowski's team, RFK Racing, was one of the leading candidates to switch over there if they did end up switching over there. But of course, that did not end up happening, and they kind of backed off. And with some of the stuff Stellantis has been doing behind the scenes, it was unknown if this was still going to happen. But now, it sounds like it's very likely going to happen. Now, I also think Honda's in the running as well. There's been a lot of talk about Honda coming in. It seems like they're very, very close. And you think about the trajectory of some of these manufacturers, right, for the Cup Series future. Going to that really quick. Could we see Honda jump up to the NASCAR Cup Series, or, Dodge jump back up to the NASCAR Cup Series. I think it is definitely certainly possible if they do make a comeback, because we saw this with Toyota. They started off in the Truck Series in 2004, and then a few years later in 2007, they jumped up the Cup. So I can see Dodge doing this thing where they do the same thing that Honda did and wait a few years to see what's going on with the next-gen platform and switch over and just be in the Truck Series, at least for the foreseeable future. Now, the other big question we have to ask ourselves is what teams could switch over to Dodge in the future. I think one team you have to look at is ThorSport. ThorSport Racing is a team that has been historically known for switching manufacturers. They started off as a Chevy team around 2000. Then around 2009, they switched from Chevrolet over, I believe in 2009 and 2010, they switched over to Toyota. Then a few years later, in around 2016 to 2017, they switched to Ford for a couple years. Then around 2019 and 2020, they switched back over to Toyota. And then in 2023, when Haley Deegan joined the program, guess what? They switched back to Ford, and they've been a Ford team ever since. I think if any team is going to switch over, it's them, because you got to think about the Ford camp. They've got Front Row over there now. So I think Front Row is a better team overall as a whole going into this year compared to ThorSport, who's taken a step backwards. So I think if a team's going to switch from the Ford camp, it is going to be ThorSport Racing. Plus, I don't think any of the drivers at that team are affiliated with Ford. Jake Garcia's not. Ty Majeski's not affiliated with Ford in a big way. Ben Rowe's not affiliated. And Matt Crafton is also certainly not affiliated with that program. Another team that I could see is a team like CR7 Motorsports, maybe, with Grant Enfinger, but he's also got that really big connection with McAnally Hilgeman, so I'm not sure about CR7 coming in. Maybe we see a new team come into the sport, because we've seen that before where new teams will show up. So maybe we'll see a team coming out of nowhere. Maybe Tony Stewart comes back in trucks in some way, shape, or form. That would certainly be very, very interesting. But I think those are the most likely candidates that could make moves to different series in the future. But this is really, really huge for Dodge. We've been hearing rumors for a long time about them maybe making a comeback. We didn't know if it was going to happen because they denied those rumors a few years ago. But now it's very likely that they're going to make the run back into sport. And I think it's really, really huge. NASCAR really needs new manufacturers. We don't know what the future Chevrolet is, but there's a lot of talk about Chevy's future. They're going to run the Camaro, from what I understand, for the next couple of years. They have a new project they're working on that's top secret, but there's also talk about Cadillac maybe coming in, replacing the Chevrolet, but at least for the next few years, maybe probably till the end of the decade, until Chevrolet can get a new branding in, because the car economy and the car manufacturer world is so interesting right now. There's also rumor about hybrid components, among other things, coming in the NASCAR Cup Series. And while it's a shame it's not fully back in Cup at this point, I think it's great that Dodge is going to likely be back in the Truck Series next year, because it's going to create more competition, and it's not going to put as much strain on those engine manufacturers in the Truck Series. Granted, they all run the Ilmor engines, but maybe Dodge brings their own engine to the sport, and we run different engine formulas. Because I think that's why NASCAR is bringing in that new thing. They're going to have the torque sensor that's going to not be fully required, but they've got the new torque sensor rules that are coming into play this year. So I do think that could play a major factor and major role as well in some of the changes coming in over there. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens and as more stuff comes out about this. But this is absolutely a massive bombshell from Chris Knight and Adam Stern. And I think we're going to see a lot more stuff get announced. And I think you're going to have some announcements on teams maybe switching brands as well. Maybe that's what the ThorSport announcement is. That could certainly be what it is. We'll just have to wait and see exactly when we see the official announcement on that front, and when a new manufacturer is coming in. But again, it sounds very likely that Dodge is coming back to the Craftsman Truck Series for the first time in a long time, and being back in NASCAR for the first time in many, many years. So we'll see what happens for the future, but I think Dodge coming back into sport is massive for the branding as a whole, and it's really big for the sport. So we'll see if Dodge actually does come back to NASCAR in 2026. So that is going to today's Long NASCAR News and Motorsports News episode. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Let's get below that and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. What are thoughts about Dodge likely coming back to NASCAR next year? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And you think Aric Almirola is actually going to make some starts with the team this year or not? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. There probably won't be more content dropping today on the channel. Tomorrow on the channel, we'll probably have some other stuff coming out. We'll probably have race picks for the Xfinity Series and Truck Series for Atlanta. We're going to have race picks likely on Thursday for the race at Atlanta as well. The Penske video as well. And if there's any major news that does break over the rest of the week, we'll discuss here live. We've got content coming out on people like Haley Deegan, Shane Van Gisbergen, Carl Roberts, Kurt Busch, Kyle Busch, Junior Motorsports, Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, Connor Zilisch, Christian Eckes, Sam Mayer, Sheldon Creed, Cletus, McFarland, Matt DiBenedetto, Donald Trump, Frankie Muniz, all the good stuff, M&M's, Todd Gillen, you name it, all the good stuff will be coming very soon on the channel. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content, other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.